In Venezuela, it was announced that the United States Court of the Southern State of Florida signed the definitive dismissal of all charges against diplomat Alex Saab. The United States government approved the shipment of bombs and fighter jets to Israel amid the already high tensions between Tel Aviv and Palestine. A tropical cyclone that swept through Madagascar killed 18 people and left 4 missing after triggering a landslide earlier this week in the north of the Indian Ocean island nation. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. On Friday, it was announced that Judge of the United States Court for the Southern District of Florida, Robert Scola, signed the definitive dismissal of all charges against Venezuelan diplomat Alex Saab. Alex Saab, who was imprisoned in the United States, was released on December 20th during a U.S. prisoner exchange. He stated after his return to Venezuela that he was a victim of a kidnapping that was seeking to overthrow and collapse the government of Venezuela through imposition of unilateral coercive measures and economic blockade. Saab denounced that during his stay in the U.S. prisons, he suffered various tortures. Venezuelan Minister of Foreign Affairs Ivan Gil published in his X account a response to the regular press conference held by the spokesman of the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Lin Jian, on March 29th. Gil's post recognized that China supports the July 28th presidential elections organization in Venezuela. In a further tweet made by the Embassy of China in Caracas, based on the press conference, it was also stated that the Beijing government would back Venezuela's presidential election under its constitution and their position to external interference in internal Venezuelan affairs. Venezuelans carry on Holy Week with activities for all. Let's see the details with our correspondent Alex Saab.
These empty streets seem to show a Venezuela in a halt. Learning activities stop, many workers are absent from their jobs, and Caracas breathes an unusual calm that contrasts with its regular noise and crowded spaces. But it is just the result of Holy Week, a moment of the year that Venezuelans live at their own pace and with joy. With a Catholic population of 92%, this is a moment for the faithful to congregate, reflect, and pay their respects.
7 months ago, I gave birth to a baby girl who is with her grandmother, and we both paid a promise because both she and I were in a very delicate health, and if we both go out of the hospital alive, I paid a promise with the little girl.
Stories like Stephanie's multiply amongst the devotees that pack the churches and squares praying to Jesus of Nazareth. The story goes that back in 1696, he saved Caracas from the yellow fever. Today, purple crowds follow the image in a procession that asks for peace and concord in the nation.
Peace and harmony. Of course, let there be no violence here again. Let everything be cool.
Holy Week is also a moment for relaxing, entertainment. City landmarks like Los Próceres to Coral Beach in La Guaira, people escape from daily worries and simply enjoy. The partygoers also have a message to give from a Venezuela that changes.
There is a lot of joy here in Venezuela, despite the circumstances, an example for many countries. Despite other problems, such as the blockade, all foreigners who come here are received with respect and much affection that in other countries they are not given as they are here. They are invited. Venezuela is going to grow.
Others profit from this moment.
How not? This year looks more fluid. It looks better. There's more movement in the economy, more money is being mobilized, a little more.
Empty streets, but crowded beaches and parks. That's how Venezuelans spend these days, where the faith and hope go hand by hand. For teleSUR English, Gladys Quesada from Caracas, Venezuela.
In this context, the streets of the Honduran city of Santa Lucia were adorned with processional carpets to honor the solemnity of Holy Week. Local artisans have invested hours of dedication and creativity to create designs that reflect religious and cultural motifs, as well as the unique identity of Honduras. The carpets are made with a variety of materials, including dyed sawdust, flowers, leaves, seeds, and other natural elements. The carpets play a crucial role in this religious event, representing the devotion and respect of the community for the teaching of the Christian faith, as well as the unity and solidarity among its members. Also in Honduras, the government announced that it will subsidize the increase in electricity rates starting in the second quarter of 2024 as part of the initiatives implemented by the state to support the population. The Regulatory Commission of Electric Energy stated that the entity is forced to make trimestrally adjustments to the base cost of generation and the tariff of distribution companies. In this sense, the government approved the adjustment to the base cost of generation for a value of $153.78, effective for the second quarter that begins on April 1st and ends at the end of June. In percentage terms, this means a slight increase of 3.45%, which will not be reflected in the bills thanks to the subsidy from the executive headed by President Xiomara Castro. On Thursday, Haitians reiterated their appeal for unity to end the violence, denouncing that the so-called political transition since the resignation of Prime Minister Ariel Henry is still pending.
The Presidential Council must be set up to calm the situation. If the people's demands are not met in 2 months' time, there will be no way out. What is happening to us has nothing to do with the country's interests. The country benefits in no way from this demagogy. On the contrary, it would have been preferable to come as close as possible to the spirit of the 1987 Constitution, which stipulates that the President of the Court of Cassation or his Vice President must be elected.
Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back. On Friday, at least 9 persons were arrested in Tajikistan on suspicions of links with a terrorist attack at the Crocus City Hall in Russia on March 22nd. According to the special services of Dushanbe, the detainees allegedly have links with a terrorist group Daesh known as the Islamic State. The arrests were made in a joint operation between the security forces of Tajikistan and the Russian forces. The situation is causing concerns among citizens who claim that such actions are damaging the image of their nation. All of the detainees are residents of the Vayat district, a region bordered in Afghanistan that has seen thousands of its citizens go to fight for the Islamic State group. The Russian government ruled out its participation in the peace conferences on the conflict in Ukraine planned to be held in Switzerland. The spokeswoman of the Russian Foreign Ministry, Marie Zakharova, pointed out that this decision was due to the conditions imposed by Kyiv, while her Swiss counterpart remarked that it was impossible to hold a peace conference without Russia and assured that it would be invited. On the eve of this meeting, the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, indicated that he is open to solve the conflict with Kyiv by peaceful means, as long as the security warranties proposed by Moscow are fulfilled. The United States government approved the shipment of bombs and fighter jets to Israel amid the already high tensions between Tel Aviv and Palestine. State Department officials detailed that they will send military equipment to Israel, including 2,300 bombs and 25 combat aircrafts. While the U.S. is advancing its militia plans, it is also taking part in talks with Qatar and Egypt to allegedly reach a humanitarian truce for Gaza, in which Washington is permanently conditioning any kind of mediation. Several international organizations, including the United Nations, have expressed grave concern about any kind of military operation in Rafah. Thousands of Palestinians put their hope in the order issued on Friday by the United Nations and expect the Israeli regime to comply with it. The expectations arises after the judgment of the United Nations High Court, which orders the government of Tel Aviv to take measures to guarantee the unhindered provision of basic services and humanitarian assistance. The inhabitants and displaced people of the Gaza Strip welcome the news that is supposed to improve the extreme conditions in which they are currently living. If Israel complies, it should increase land crossings to allow the entry of food, water, fuel, and other supplies.
Humanitarian conditions are miserable. We want a solution. We need a solution. The aid that reaches North Gaza does not reach us, and if it does, those who receive it die. Meanwhile, the aid that reaches South Gaza is sold in the retail or wholesale markets for the traders.
It was a brave and good decision by the International Court of Justice, but will Israel abide by the ruling? Israel is above everything and above the law.
The government of Pakistan urged the world to put pressure on Israel to comply with the resolution adopted by the United Nations Security Council on a ceasefire in Gaza. The spokeswoman of the Pakistani Foreign Ministry, Muhammad Sara Baloch, denounced that in spite of the decision of the United Nations organization, the siege against Gaza continues. She also highlighted the situation faced by the Palestinians in the occupied territories, including genocide and hunger. In this regard, she added that the priority is to put an end to the violence, stop the siege, and allow humanitarian aid to enter the Strip. In Jordan, thousands of people demonstrated for the fifth night in a row near the Israeli embassy to demand an end to the genocide against the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip. Demonstrators gathered in front of the Al-Kaloti Mosque in Amman in favor of the Palestinian resistance in the midst of a strong security apparatus that protected the Israeli diplomat headquarters with hundreds of policemen and armored vehicles. In this context, the demonstrators demanded that the Jordanian government cancel the 1994 Wadi Araba Treaty, which normalized relations with Israel. They also condemned the inaction of the Arab countries in the face of the genocide perpetrated by Israel in the Gaza Strip. In Palestine, the health situation is worsening in the Gaza Strip. Shortage of basic supplies leads to increases in hepatitis cases and higher risk of infections. More details in the following report.
The Palestinian population in Gaza is currently facing high sanitary risks due to the devastation caused by the ravages of the attacks and the destruction of most of its hospital centers, combined with the scarcity of basic supplies such as food, water, and fuel.
The word misery is not enough, the word suffering is not enough, the word trade is not enough. This people has never fallen. It has always had its head held high from its beginnings, from its ancestors, its great-great-grandparents and grandparents and all its generation. We only bow down before our God. We only kneel in our place of prayer. Our suffering starts from childhood. My child suffers, my neighbor's child suffers, my partner's child in the tent suffers. Besides, the environmental situation is extremely deteriorated. Here, the children have intestinal infection every day. There are all kinds of diseases. Hepatitis has proliferated in an impressive way. There are 20,000 to 30,000 cases.
At least 1.5 million citizens are refugees in the border town of Rafah, crammed into United Nations educational centers and improvised tents.
I was displaced 4 months ago today. then from Delhi to Han Yunis, and then from Han Yunis to Rafah. That is to say that I am displaced several times. Life here is very, very hard for us. Later the heat will come and may God help us. I call on all the Arab countries to support us and to stop this injustice that is being committed against us, because we are really tired of it. Our situation is too difficult. There is no food or medicine or anything. There are no basic elements to survive.
Meanwhile, the International Court of Justice on Thursday ordered Israel to ensure without delay the delivery of urgent humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip. According to the UN's highest court, Tel Aviv must take all necessary and effective measures to ensure the unimpeded provision of basic services and humanitarian aid.
We have a final short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience, you can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. Final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. A tropical cyclone that swept through Madagascar killed 18 people and left 4 missing after triggering a landslide earlier this week in the north of the Indian Ocean island nation. The National Disaster Management Office said that the storm also caused severe flooding that partially submerged entire villages, displaced or affected about 47,000 people, and caused a landslide that injured 3 people. Cyclone Gamane hit northern Madagascar on Wednesday and has now weakened considerably, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. Madagascar has been hit by at least 10 strong tropical cyclones since the start of 2022 and faces a hunger crisis in several parts of the island due to the damaging impact of extreme weather. In Iceland, authorities declared a state of emergency in the south of the country after experiencing another volcanic eruption on the Reykjanes Peninsula. Images released showed the eruption of the volcano with an aurora borealis as a backdrop. The eruption site is located a few kilometers northeast of the coastal city of Grindavik, which has a population of approximately 3,800 inhabitants who were evacuated before the initial eruption in December 2023. Volcanic activity had decreased during the beginning of March, so some residents choose to return to their homes. However, authorities have carried out a new evacuation of about 700 people who were in the tourist resort of Blue Lagoon recently. In Chad, thousands of Sudanese refugees are affected by the lack of water, food, and the spread of infections such as hepatitis. The organization Doctors Without Borders reported in the last week cases of hepatitis spreading through refugee camps in eastern Chad, where more than 730,000 Sudanese who fled the extreme violence in neighboring Sudan have settled. Infections rates increased by poor sanitary conditions and a severe shortage of clean water. According to the latest report of the International Organization for Migration Agency, more than 2 million people have fled Sudan since the outbreak of the war on April 15, 2023. On Friday, the European Union decided to remove Israel from hosting the European Gymnastics Championship because of the situation in the Gaza Strip. The artistic gymnastics competition was to be held for the 11th time in Israel and was scheduled for May 13, 2025. In this sense, the organizer opened the application process for new candidacies, which will be available until April 23rd of this year. In addition to this suspension, the International Gymnastics Federation also cancelled the Rhythmic Gymnastics Challenge World Cup, scheduled to be held next June in Jerusalem. And we keep talking about sports because Japanese swimmer Rikako Ike has qualified for Paris 2024 as a leukemia survivor. The 23-year-old swimmer was diagnosed in 2018 and was hospitalized for 10 months, returning to compete during 2020. However, she failed to qualify for the last edition of the Olympic Games in her home country. However, in Paris 2024, she will be part of the Japanese delegation after securing her quota in the 100 miles butterfly style category with a time of 57.34 seconds in her competition. We have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media as well: Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For Telesur English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.